Welcome back to the Zyori podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us here on podcast number 74. It is 6/28/2015, about 6:45 p.m. here on the Pacific Coast. Finally getting around to doing another podcast. I've been a little bit lazy with it. Ended up only doing 2 in the month of June, but don't worry, we're making up for it here because we've got a guest. We've got Mr. Toffees, a fellow podcaster, a fellow Dota 2 community contributor, joining us tonight. Toffees, my man, how you feeling?
I'm good. Glad to be here. Excited about talking about, stuff outside of Dota as well as inside of Dota, and I think we should have some fun.
Yes, exactly right. We're going to talk about all sorts of things. I sort of titled this Deep Non-Dota Shit because we are going to break into a couple of dense issues here. You like politics, I like politics. We've sort of talked about, you've really talked about wanting to do a podcast just about politics.
Yep.
Is that an actual like dream? Is that a real plan that might
I mean,
happen? Or you
it
just
is. I mean,
talking?
so when I was in college, I was a poli-sci major for a little while, and I did graduate with a history major, and I have an education degree, a history degree. So I love this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard to find the market, and I love Jon Stewart. I think watching like shows like The Daily Show, getting small doses of news with comedy have always inspired me to love the news even more. So I
Yeah.
think that that's something that I've always wanted to do. I just don't know if I'm funny enough to actually make it happen.
I can empathize with that. I mean, when I watch Jon Stewart, I really think to myself, I will never be that funny. And you also have to remember
Right?
he has like a team of writers that help him come up with that shit every day. So it's not
Hmm.
just one person. It's a ridiculous expectation the way it's presented, but some people are just genuinely funny. I mean, Pyrian Flax I think is a great example. When I talk to him,
Right.
he's a witty guy, man. That's why he's just good at
Mhm.
games, he's good at people. He's just I don't have that same ability to just make people laugh at kind of the snap of a finger like that. It's pretty impressive. Toffees, I want to ask you an honest question. How old are you?
31.
Okay, so were you of age to think Adam Sandler was funny, if that makes sense? There was this group of
Yeah.
like 90s millennials that were just in love with Adam Sandler. I was one of them. He was my favorite
Yeah.
actor
I
for
mean,
like 10 years. You were
I
on
saw
the
Bill.
same boat.
I saw Billy Madison in the movie theater.
Oh shit. Okay.
So I yes no I think he's funny. I actually admire to a certain extent his work ethic.
Mhm.
And I think that I find him entertaining. I think that he got stuck for a while doing those stupid character roles that was really popular in the 90s.
Yeah.
But I think some of his stuff outside of say the Grown Up series hasn't been completely terrible. Like if you ever saw what was the movie with Spanglish, I think it was called.
The Grown Up series. Sorry, I just the thought of that
It's fine.
movie actually just made me laugh. It's ridiculous.
It is.
Spanglish was okay. That's the one where he's a
Yeah.
chef, right? And he falls in love with the housemaid or whatever she is.
Yeah, I don't know if he's a rich guy or a chef or what he is, but yeah, he falls in love with someone who doesn't speak his language, and it was a decent rom com, but it was showing that he wasn't just
Yeah.
well, I can't even do an impression of him,
Oh, I can't.
How's everybody today?
That's not even close, but I couldn't do it any
Mm-mm.
better. Apparently, all of his movies together have grossed over 2 billion at the box office. That's ridiculous, man.
Wow.
He's got some fucking money in the bank. Now, the reason I bring this up, I'm a big Netflix guy, and I guess last week popped up on my feed that The Cobbler is his newest movie. I don't know if you're a fellow
Yes.
Netflixer. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, but I imagine it's terrible. The reviews were not good. It seemed like click,
No.
except for shoes. Apparently, he's a cobbler, and he has the magical ability to put on people's shoes and then live their lives and get those experiences. So
Yeah, I forgot who it was. There's like a rapper that's in the film as one of the characters who
I can
his life he
only imagine.
experiences. And I watched an interview with him about the cobbler, and I just went, I'm not watching that film.
Oh my God, what did he
It was
say? Did
just
he
so
even
bad.
talk it up like there was any way that it could be a good movie? I wonder how it did at the
No, well, I
box
mean, he,
office.
he did. He pitched it. He's like, it was cool. It's cool, man. It's a good film because Adam Sandler, he's in my shoes for a day, and it's good. You gotta check it out. And I was
Dude,
like, all right, that is a resounding endorsement, sir.
it got 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is
Wow,
atrocious. Oh my.
that's brutal.
Whew. And somehow IMDb gave it a 5.9, so you never know. Maybe it's not that bad. Or that just speaks to
Hmm.
IMDb's rating system. So I don't know.
Right,
I
let's
thought it
see.
might be worth mentioning here. Oh, the box office. Apparently, Wikipedia says 24,000. That can't be
That's
right.
it. That
24.
can't be right.
It says the budget was an estimated 10 million. How? That's got to be a typo. There's no possible way. That's like 30 people.
It was 9 million for the to employ Adam Sandler and 1 million to make the movie.
Probably. I mean, Jesus. Well, okay, moving forward. So, God, I haven't done a podcast since June 6th here at Toffees. So I feel, or no, not 6th, 16th, 1/6. A lot of stuff has happened since then. A lot of it in the political arena. We've seen Donald Trump coming out that he's running for president. I also say coming out because of all the great news. A lot of gay jokes going to happen tonight. Gay marriage is now basically legal in America. They officially ruled that states do not have the power to not recognize gay marriage, and that states have to recognize gay marriage in other states. So basically, it's a fucking thing now. Deal with it. Gay people got a big bump up in their social status. So that's pretty cool. Trump, I don't know how cool that actually is. I
mean, the guy's a circus clown, and I probably shouldn't say this because he probably has the money to shut my show down or something.
I don't know, man. We're pretty small fish, I think.
You never know with Donald Trump. But I mean, look at this guy. He's someone who is an investor, and I think a lot of people in the business community respected his investment prowess. And then all of a sudden he launches this show called The Apprentice and becomes sort of a pop culture figure and embraces it. And I honestly sometimes think that Donald Trump is just doing all of this as sort of a caricature, if that makes sense, to make more money, to sort of keep growing as a character. But he's going to be a terrible candidate, and I am incredibly excited about him joining the run because there's nothing I love more than watching primary debates and how ridiculous and stupid they get. And I think that he's going to add an awful lot to that.
You know, do you have any idea if they're going to be streamed online this go around? I feel like that's something YouTube could really get into. You know, I want to watch them, but I don't have cable. So what do I do?
Oh, I think that I would imagine that the actual organizations will stream them, or at least NBC will have it on the website or something.
I would hope
it's got to be.
It's a pretty big deal, right? I mean, doesn't CNN? Right. I guess it trades around who gets to host which ones, because there's what, 10 debates or 8, or there's a certain amount.
I think it's 10, and each one is debated by or run by a different organization. But to put it, we're moving next month, and my wife and I have been talking about not getting TV and just doing the Netflix, Hulu, whatever.
Right.
And one of my arguments for getting TV, at least for a year, is that I want to watch all of the political coverage wall to wall because it's going to be insane.
That is a good point. I've actually had a similar thought. We've talked about getting it for 3 things, basically. 1, ESPN. Number 2, for me, CNN, and then number 3 is HBO. But not really HBO because we have HBO Go, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, now you can get HBO independent of cable, which is
that's true.
Awesome.
HBO
because their new show. Well, they just launched 3 new shows too that are all really good. So HBO locking it up, man.
What are their new ones this season coming around? True Detective just started. Looks
True Detective just started.
Great.
First episode was very strong, I thought. Very different from the original.
But
good. The second one has The Rock in it. I forgot what it's called, but it's about like a retired football player who becomes a financial manager.
Ballers, I think it's called. I'm not so sure about it. It looks like it could be.
It was fun.
Okay.
It was fun.
I actually didn't
great
watch
one.
it.
It was okay. And then the other one that I think is underrated is they released a show called Brink, which takes place or is set in, I believe that it's Islamabad at a U.S. embassy as protests or sort of powder kegging. So it's sort of a foreign political show from what I can tell so far. I don't know if it'll be a comedy or not. Right, and I can't tell if it's a Jack Black comedy or if it's a Jack Black kind of cutting his teeth on not doing comedy.
It says, watch the first episode of the new comedy series. Oh, I thought it was a joke about the show. It's just telling me to log into Facebook. Derp. How great. All right.
So it might be I think it is funny. It had funniness in there.
It's supposed to be funny, I think. But
the correspondent who does a lot of stuff for Jon Stewart's show is one of the leads as well.
Which one?
So I think it'll be entertaining.
Because they're very different.
His name off the top of my head.
Oh, it's a guy. Is it the Jason dude, the one that's married to Samantha Bee? Is it that guy?
No. I think he's an Indian guy. I don't know for sure though. I don't really.
I'm not sure. I'm actually not that up on the Daily Show. I haven't been watching it over the past month or so. Have they been doing good shit? I know Stewart's leaving soon, so I feel like every time I look at it, they're advertising like old footage that's really funny and all that kind of shit.
It's got like 3 weeks left, but all of the correspondents have essentially quit the show. So I don't know what the new guy's going to do. I guess they're going to rebuild the staff from scratch. But I'm just mad because I wanted him to stay through coverage of this election. But he's not going to, which is a shame.
Wow, I didn't realize it was coming to an end that soon. And his staff is all like they're actually going to keep the show going. They're not just going to cancel it. They're going to replace him and
Yeah.
have a daily show version 2.0 or some shit.
Yep, they named a replacement. The guy's coming on board in a couple of weeks. He's already there, I guess, working with the staff.
Oh God.
But a lot of the senior reporters, quote unquote, who are always on, have gone to other projects instead of staying with the show. So I don't know why. Maybe, I mean, I'd be
Wow.
pretty annoyed if I spent 10 years with Jon Stewart as one of his lead reporters, quote unquote, and got replaced by someone nobody had ever heard of.
Yeah, that's for sure. It looks like John Oliver was really ahead of the game. You know, I remember when he quit, it felt like,
Mhm.
damn, where did that come from? And then, okay, he's got his own show on HBO. It turned out to be really good. I actually thought the first few episodes were quite good. Even that was it the
Mhm.
second episode when he showed all the dicks. I kind of
Yeah,
liked that. He's just like, we gotta, it's just gotta let loose, like the Bob Saget thing. You know, I've just been saying PG
right.
shit for so long. I gotta let it out. I gotta say cunt 10 times in a row and just really feel good about myself. That happens, man. People just
No, I
gotta
like his show. I think it's good.
let loose. Yeah, it's good stuff. I'm a pretty big fan. I wonder how big the team is for that. I honestly, I've put a lot. I'm sure that's probably look upable, but how much
Mhm.
support staff does he have to like? How do they come up with that kind of good journalism every week consistently for a full run like that?
Right. I don't know. He's been doing it for like 15, 20 years or something like that. So
That's true.
it's I'm not sure if you watch his old clips though. He
Yeah.
like it started out it feels like it started out Wayne's World style in a garage, crappy couches, mediocre interviews, and just sort of grew from there.
I see.
So it's been the Daily Show titled the Daily Show with Jon Stewart has been around since 1999. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It premiered in 1996 apparently. It was hosted by Craig Kilborn originally.
Okay. So
Did not
it's
know that.
like a 20-year run. You
Mm-hmm.
know, another show that's like that is The Simpsons. I remember when it hit its 25-year anniversary or some shit, they were talking about the generation of people, also of which I'm a part of, that don't remember a time on TV when The Simpsons wasn't there. Since my
That's a
childhood,
good point.
ever since I remember turning on the TV, The
Wow.
Simpsons has always been on at prime time and been a relevant thing, a joke that people always get in pretty much any American venue. And that's kind of a
Mhm.
weird thing. It makes The Simpsons kind of a cultural icon in some ways, which is both scary and
Yeah.
also kind of fucking neat.
Yeah. No, I saw a list somewhere that was like things that kids today will never hear, and it was pretty interesting. Stuff like a busy signal or having to memorize a phone number. Like all these things just don't exist anymore.
A busy signal. Yeah, I've thought about being stranded when my phone is dead and thinking, I found a phone. Shit, I don't
Hmm.
know anyone's phone number. Oh my
Yeah.
God. That's scary. I know
It
I
is.
know my parents' phone numbers, my own, and I think that's it, honestly.
I don't even know my wife's phone number.
Wow. Well, you're already there, man. Then you done did it.
Right?
Have
Well,
you
because I'm
seen
old and
Have you seen the
go ahead.
Dark Mirror series on you have did you say you had Netflix? You have Netflix rather?
I do, but I have not watched anything called The Dark Mirror.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's a BBC series. It's 6 episodes, and they did a winter special at the end of 2014. It's
Hmm.
it's like kind of Twilight Zone esque, and it's all about human-based conundrums around future technology. So they'll have one
Hmm.
episode's about this little memory chip thing that you get implanted, and then your eyes are kind of like video cameras, and it stores everything, and you can run it back, and it like Wi-Fi's into your or Bluetooth into your TV and shit. So when someone you're arguing about something with someone, and you're
Right.
saying things differently, you can just run it back and be like, "Nah, bitch, you were wrong. Look." And it's very it's weird. It's more about like the human psyche, the kind of link to technology. There's all sorts of it's good. You should it's a one of those shows that's kind of dense, but I highly recommend it. Anything
I'll check
BBC
it
does
out.
is good, honestly. I like British
That's true.
accents too.
I won't argue that. I don't love it when you watch it while you're in England. BBC is pretty terrible, but they make the few shows
Oh.
that they make really well.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
Their
mean,
programming is their reality TV shows. Oh my God, they're so bad.
what are they like actually? I don't know any. I haven't watched much BBC from England
They're
in
very
a while.
similar. I feel when I was over there, they were very similar to what we have. But imagine slicing the budget to like a quarter and making it really, really cheesy. Like,
So,
so I mean, you watch Japanese game shows and stuff. It's got a similar vibe to it, where everything's sort of over the top a
oh,
little bit.
it's Black Mirror, not Dark Mirror. Fuck, I fucked it up.
Okay.
But it is Black Mirror. Sorry, that's an aside. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess Jersey Shore is pretty high budget, actually. You know, that was one of that broke some record for the premiere of the second
Yeah.
season. It was
It's a,
MTV's most watched show and concurrent viewers, like 35 million or some crazy shit.
from what I understand, it was insanely popular in England as well.
Really? I can
Yep.
imagine.
I have some friends there who are like, "Oh, we love your Jersey Shore show," and I was like, "Oh my God, please tell me no."
It's giving a bad
So,
name to New Jersey everywhere in the world, not even just in America.
well, to
That's
America
terrible.
in general. So, you know how, and this is an interesting side topic. You know how if you travel abroad, especially in England around there,
Uh-huh.
everyone has this perception of Americans as sort of cowboys, rootin' tootin' shooting, steak eating sons of bitches. Um,
Yep.
apparently, a lot of that become is because the number one most exported show from America during I think it was like the 80s was Dallas. And Dallas was insanely popular in England and a lot of European places. So a lot of the perspective that those people growing up in the 80s got of America was watching the show Dallas, which was big hair, cowboy hats, and glittery boots.
Wow. That is strange. It's weird how cultural
Hmm.
perceptions change based on media. And do you watch
Hmm.
Vice at all? One of their more recent episodes did a thing about this very weird phenomena in China where Westerns just kind of culture is idolized. So you can be a talent for hire as a white person and just get jobs as a presenter, and they'll give you fake credentials. They did this whole thing where the guy goes there, he gets an agent, she gets him jobs
Hmm.
right away, and one of them was he pretended to be a doctor and read this little speech that somebody wrote for him to premiere this new wing of a hospital. One of them was
Hmm.
going to some sort of business convention and pretending to be an investor and
Hmm.
collecting business cards from ones that he thought were interesting, and people were more receptive to the white people because they stand out more. So you just get
Interesting.
paid to be white in like smaller cities in China. It's fucking weird. And it kind of reminds me of that. It's so one of them he just went out with this rich couple because they wanted to look cool when they went out to dinner. You know, they
Wow.
just
I feel like I live in the wrong place. I feel like I work way too hard for
yeah. Well,
I
you
could
got to
just
deal
I
with
could
the
just go
pollution
pretend to
though,
be.
dude. It's next
That's true. I heard
level.
that's crazy. Because you've been to
It's
China, right? So you've experienced it personally.
Yeah, like Beijing is way worse. The way it was described to me when I was there by someone that spoke English, they have some system of measuring how bad the pollution is in the air, and they said a bad day in LA in the smog is like 90 on that scale. Here,
Interesting.
the average day in Shanghai, they said today is like 320. And in Beijing,
Wow.
in the middle of the city, it's like 500 to 600. So
That's
I
crazy.
I forget what the scale is called. I don't know exactly if it's like linear or how it moves, but that just gives you a sort of general reference of the pollution is fucking serious. So if you're outside of the big cities, it's not nearly as bad. Like the rural China, the pollution is not so awful in a lot of places, but
Mm.
the smaller cities, it's manageable. But both Hotbit and myself had a cough for like 6 months since we came back, and it was not a
Intriguing.
normal cough. You know, I'll smoke the occasional cigarette. Everybody coughs a little bit here and there. This is like a 5 minute coughing spree, and then over the months it turned into a 4 minute, a
Mm.
3 minute, and now it's kind of gone away. But it was pollution related. It'll really mess you up if you're over there without a face mask or anything else. I'm sure Charlie can attest to how nasty it is in some places.
I'll never mock the face mask again, then, I suppose.
They look goofy. We didn't wear them when we were there, and everybody in our group was sick, so you're kind of extra nasally and just kind of
Right.
gross and cruddy. But the masks, I think, actually do make a difference if you can stand having the damn thing
Oh,
on your face. But you also have to get used to
intriguing.
washing your hands with just water, and in some cases, not at all after going to the
Mm.
bathroom. That's a little bit strange as well. At the venue,
Yeah,
you
no,
go into the bathroom, and there's just a sink, no way to dry your hands, and no soap. So you're just kind of like, well, it's better than nothing. That's what they said to me. It's
that's
better than
true.
nothing. Like, well,
That's
okay.
true. I've hiked in rural Peru, and it is better than I think a lot of facilities that many people in the world have. That was an experience, man.
Yeah, it's
I don't know if you've been to South America. I've been out
I have not. I went
in
to
the back
Costa
country.
Rica when I was young, but I was a bit too young to really absorb it. Something fierce. It's on
No, it was
bucket list
intense. I
though.
mean, no toilets, just holes. There's usually a guy standing around selling uh, toilet paper to white people by like, the
Really?
square. Yeah, so I'd walk in, he'd be like, toilet paper, 25 cents. I give him 25 cents and get like, I don't know, 12 squares. And then I'd be like, okay, here's $1. Give me some more. God damn it. And then you poop, you do your thing in the hole, and then you have to walk back out. There's not like there was no sink just sitting there. It was terrible.
Yeah, that gets a little grody. I guess at least were you around a lot of people, or were you kind of isolated hiking around?
We did a little bit of each. So we went through a couple
Okay.
of the larger cities. We stayed in Miraflores for a while and went up to Cusco and stuff. And then we also hiked the Inca Trail. So we were actually in the kind of the boonies for a day and a half, and that was pretty cool too. Kind of just being out in the countryside.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
little bit better when you're by yourself. When you're constantly around the people, it's like yeah, I don't know. Everything just feels germy. That's why one of the reasons I hate going to the gym. You know, you used to be an athletic type, right? You used to work out a lot, huh?
There was a time. There was a time in my life. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be. I want to be a little less soggy before TI. I'm not really fat, but I'm just, I'm not as trim as I used to be. I've eaten a lot of cheeseburgers over the last year, especially.
Mm.
I'm trying to cut down on the carbs. I'm having a lot more lettuce wrapped burgers than I am regular buns. But I just hate going to the gym so goddamn much. I went today, and I'm
Hmm.
actually a little bit sore. I'm kind of proud of myself for really pushing because the last three times I've gone, I've just been a pussy and not really,
Hmm.
you know, it's you. If you don't feel it like an hour later, then you know you didn't go that hard. You know.
When you feel good when you feel good an hour later too, when you're like, oh yeah, maybe my muscles do feel bigger.
Yeah, lactic
But
acid and shit. It makes me feel like a
yep,
man when I'm eating that protein, the man meat. But
I gotta get back on track. No,
do you
I
have any
lost 10
tips
pounds
though?
before
How
the
do you make it
summit and I
fun?
gained them all back.
Oh God,
I
it's awful.
fucking don't know. I hated it, dude. I used to
Oh,
go to the gym 3 times a day, and I hated every single visit. Every single visit. The people who are addicted to it, my friends who are like, yes, I love the gym. I'm convinced that they went through some Pavlovian training and just convinced themselves that they hate their life or something like that because I don't know how to make it fun. I
I
wish I could.
I don't
I
either.
literally went 3 times a day, and I would just tell myself, "This is going to help you get laid. This is going to help you get work," and suck it
Yeah.
up for an hour.
That's true. Like I thought to myself the other day, I had you know Doug. Do you know that show from the '90s? The
Yeah.
the Quail Man shit. He's always daydreaming. I had a
Yep.
Doug moment where I'm just kind of daydreaming off about a parallel universe that's probably never going to happen. Where I'm like super ripped and I've got like this nice fucking body with these pecs and these big shoulders. I'm just like, would I be like in a better position? Would I get more jobs? Would people just receive me better because I'd be some fucking buffed up, nice looking, trim kind of a dude, And then I realized that that's never going to happen. At best case, I don't get fat, but I don't think I'm ever going to be into the gym enough to really be just one of those guys that's just in shape, just up there killing it. I just
Yeah,
fucking hate it.
but I preface this. I think that the new cool is thin, not strong. And I think that we have the benefit of working in an industry where we now wear suits. And I don't know if you've ever seen a huge guy in a suit, like a buff guy. It
The
doesn't really
Rock,
work
dude.
that well.
Ballers.
I mean, yeah, but he still looks like he's going to tear the thing open. So I think it looks
It's
good
true.
as long as you're slimmed down. Now, the real problem is if you get like Hawaiian blood, like me, and it's just you're just predestined to get big.
Yeah. You
It's a fight to drop it.
You are a big guy. I was surprised. You're a way taller than I would
Mhm.
imagine everybody thinks just seeing you on camera.
Yeah,
You
that
you
is
you
true.
can tower over people if you so choose. It's impressive.
I I am 6'3" on a good day or on a
Yeah,
bad day, I guess.
a bad
So
day.
no, I think that was the funniest thing at the summit to me was how tall some of the people there were. Like
Oh yeah.
Action Slacks was way bigger than I thought he
Me
would be.
me too.
Gods is
Yeah.
huge.
Gods, yep. Cinderin as well. He's quite tall. He has bad
Yeah.
posture, but he's very tall. I've actually been really trying to improve my posture recently. I've been stretching a lot. I've been slacking on the real yoga. I haven't been going to the classes, but I've been trying to sit up straight, and it makes a difference. I feel a little bit taller after not just completely hunching over in my chair like I used to. But um, so, all right, what do you want to talk about political wise here? We can talk about TI invites a little bit and that whole conundrum. We can talk about
Mhm.
Uber. We can talk about deep web shit or just anything politically related, man. The sky's the limit. Since you're the guest of honor today, I want to give you the
Right.
choice of next topic here.
I'd be up for all three. I think that the
What
folks
we
who listen to the
consider.
podcast would probably be very interested in hearing about the TI stuff. I
All right.
also think that the Uber thing is very interesting. So if you guys don't know, there were riots in Paris over Uber, where Uber actually started. And I don't think that that's the interesting part so much as what Uber's been doing to represent themselves, even here in the States, like buying up lobbyists, trying to get representation against the bigger organizations, and sort of de-establishing a precedent of like 14-year-old regulations on the cab industry. I think that that's been pretty interesting stuff they've been working on.
Yeah. It really depends on what perspective you look at it from, and just by feeling out on Twitter, it's a very charged issue, and a
Hmm.
lot of it seems to be based on just really government system, kind of more socialist versus
Hmm.
more capitalist, based on if you think
Yep.
Uber is a positive thing or a bad thing. The issue with Paris is that, in my opinion, the way the cab industry is set up, as you put it, is just kind of
Hmm.
outdated. It's really
Hmm.
expensive. Apparently, you have to spend hundreds of thousands of euros on these cab licenses to be able to have the
Yep.
right to run a legal taxi in a city like Paris, because I guess it's so congested and they only want quality cab drivers, whatever the reasons are. So Uber doesn't fuck around with any of that shit. It's just an app you install on your phone and you say, okay, I'm
Hmm.
available, let's go. And you start picking people up. There's really nothing to it besides that. And the taxi drivers, I think they reported they were down like 35 to 40% of their revenue like
Yep.
before Uber kind of moved in. So that's a big hit. And as they say, taxi drivers are going to start going at a not be able to make ends meet. They're not making enough money, and who's going to pay for that? And France says Uber should pay for that, and Uber's just like, we're just a fucking app that people are using because it's
Right.
good. Like we're it's a flaw in your system that is the problem here. We're just kind of efficiency is the name of the game. That's why people like what we
Right.
do.
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting example of like new versus old, right? Because if you think about it in the context of, let's say regulations are 15 years old. I'm 31, so that would put me at 16 when the regulations were made. When I was 16, no one had a cell phone. If I wanted to go to a friend's house after school or meet up with them at the mall, like if I had to go home and do homework and meet up at the mall later, we made arrangements. We would call each other on wired phones. So if I had gone to, say, Paris and hopped into the back of a cab and the guy had been a complete asshole, taken 65 different routes that would have cost me a fortune, and then maybe even just knocked me out or stolen my wallet, there's nothing that you could really do, right? There's no responsibility. There's no GPS tracking. There's no potential for me to, besides me saying, this guy screwed me over. And what
Hmm.
am I going to do? Get on the internet and talk about how that cab company screwed me? I can't.
You could, but
Because
I don't think it would
I mean, you
matter.
could, but you had to use MS-DOS and it was difficult.
Oh
Or
yeah,
I think,
back in
no,
the
this,
day, yeah.
Windows was out, but so it was tough. Now we live in an era where Uber can exist because there's so much other stuff to help them with regulation and functionality.
Hmm.
And Uber exists on a system of reviews, right? Like if an Uber driver is bad, they stop being an Uber driver very, very quickly.
Right.
And I think that the regulations just haven't updated. But when I was, I don't know if, did you know that Korea, this is an interesting side story that I think applies. Did you know that in Korea, the only way that you can make online purchases for the average person, not a tech genius,
Hmm.
is to use Internet Explorer?
No. Wait, what do you mean that's the only way? What if you put Chrome on a
So
computer there, it just doesn't
if
work?
you if you logged into Chrome on a computer there, a pop-up comes through immediately that says you will not be able to make purchases on this browser. And there was a law put into effect back when you guys remember when Internet Explorer was like huge. I don't remember when it was, but everyone used it when Windows was sort of like the jam.
It was like 90s, like
Um,
Windows 98
yeah,
through XP. I would say when Internet Explorer was the primary browser for sure. Firefox was there, but
yep.
not what most people used.
So it was the big browser, and it came up with, I forgot what the technology is called, but it was, sort of had the first safeguard for, I guess, purchasing stuff online built into it. And the
Okay.
Korean government passed a law, I assume with the help of lobbyists, that
Of
using
course.
Internet Explorer was the only way to purchase online safely. So now, from what I understand, unless you have a workaround program that costs like $70 or something, you have to purchase through Internet Explorer. So, like, if you bought an Apple, this is the hard part. If you bought an Apple in Korea, you have to download a separate program or have a separate computer that lets you purchase through Windows so you can use Explorer if you want to buy online stuff.
Holy shit.
So,
That's I had
so
I've
to
never heard of
me,
this. That's crazy.
so to me, it's interesting because this seems a lot. This is sort of the Uber thing, right? Is like right now the taxi cabs operate out of a powerful infrastructure created by government and lobbyists 14 years ago, and everyone's trying to get past that. Uber saying, let's change the rules. But
Hmm.
how do you, as a startup, go to war with lobbyists that have been embedded in a system for 14 years?
Yeah.
Uber's answer is we have $50 million or $50 billion, some freaking crazy number.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you know this, but Uber is currently buying up lobbyists in Washington as fast as they possibly can
Oh, surely.
because they've realized the only way to change the system is to break the system, essentially.
Yep. No, that's what you do when you get that amount of money, and that is the argument that a lot of people use as to why Uber should pay for a lot of the damages they've caused to the existing taxi industry is because they have so much money. And somebody just PM'd me, not even about the France thing, and just said, man, I think Uber just doesn't treat their drivers very well. I think that company's fucked up. And I was like, well, that's a totally different argument, but what's so bad about it? They're like, they just don't pay them enough. You know, they make so much money and the drivers barely make ends meet. And I was like, well, basically he said that he didn't like the idea of drivers being contractors is what it boiled down to. He said, no benefits, nothing, you just get a little bit of money and that's it. I'm like, well, that's just, it is what it is, man. If you don't like it, don't do it. That's the offer they present. And people say, hey, that sounds like a good use of my time. I'm an efficient taxi driver. If you're not saying that to yourself, then you should probably look for another line of work. And he said, well, that's easier said than done. You can't just pick it. I don't know. Then it changes to a different argument after that. You know, we're not talking about Uber anymore. We're talking about personal choice and how you decide to.
I mean, any jobs like that. I delivered pizza for a while after college, and they paid me, what was it, $1.25 an hour, I think it was. And then I got a dollar.
Dude. I guess you get tips, right? But
yeah,
still.
well, I mean, even today, if you go and wait tables in a restaurant today, 2015, most restaurants will pay you $2.50, 15 cents per hour.
That's all it is? I thought it was a little higher than that now.
No, because it might have gone up to like $2.50 or $2.75, but the government assumes that tips are part of your minimum wage. So when you look at that perspective, essentially companies are hiring young adults or grown adults to work for nothing that are now crowdsourcing their payment or their salary. So I think restaurants are essentially one of the first examples of crowdsourcing that we saw, where they said, all right, if you want good service, you pay for good service. We're not going to.
That's interesting, yeah. I mean, I've personally had really good experiences with Uber in America, and that's part of the reason why I'm like, well, I'm in favor of this because I like it. I've always been intimidated of taxis. I don't really know how to call a taxi. Super fucking easy. I don't have to tip. I like that. You know, it's all digital, so I don't even have to give them money. It's just like, cool, sweet. The internet did that transaction. See ya. I don't know. It's also, there's just a very real feel to it. I feel like when you're, like last time I was in Seattle, I used Uber to get around quite a bit, and it's nice to kind of get a feel for the people, the culture a little bit, because they're all just normal people. Most of them have other jobs. It's just a part-time thing, so you can.
Right. They're
happy to chat with you, and I've had nothing but good experiences. Except one time the guy got lost, but still they refunded my money, so I mean I still won. It was a good deal. But yeah, the shit in Paris is it's a pretty big deal. They protested yesterday, and drivers, normal taxi drivers, were really mad. They blocked roads, they flipped cars over, they burned tires, they completely shut down car traffic in the city, basically, for the entire day and probably some time after that. And there were also a lot of instances of violence. There are some reports of people calling Ubers, having them drive them to some remote locations, then they could kick the shit out of the Uber driver and then have somebody else come pick them up and just leave them there. It's like, damn, dude. That is harsh. That is fucked.
Well, that's straight up Teamster tactics from, what was it, the 20s and 30s, right? The idea of like, we're going to drive a truck and not be a Teamster. We're just going to follow you out and beat the crap out of you. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's not surprising. But I think it's a tough argument or fight for Uber, but it's an important one because I think that it really sort of sums up the future of where the service and technology interactions are going to be as culture moves forward versus sort of the old system. And which one's going to come out on top should be pretty interesting.
Yep. I think in general, technologies like this that are just more efficient, provide a better service, and just overall are a better experience will win out over time, but it's a struggle for the new to replace the old, as you talked about, and I completely agree. And we'll see. Uber's got enough money. They seem motivated. So as I've said a lot recently, we live in interesting times. It'll be fun to see how it all plays out. I want to talk about TI a little bit, though, partially because I'm pretty fucking excited, man. I'm not going to lie.
Congratulations on your invite, by the way.
Whew, thank you. I appreciate it. It was a little bit scary. I think a lot of people had high expectations at the hub. Everybody's very positive. It's still pretty far out. You don't really know. All you have to compare it to is last year, where pretty much everybody you can imagine was invited. This go around, we don't have much of an idea. It becomes apparent that invites are trickling out. As LD mentioned in his blog, the caster group are pretty tight-knit, and they tend to be a little gossipy and talk from time to time. So there were inklings of, okay, the people you would expect have been invited. Okay, let's see who's coming next. And I think I was one of the last people asked. I was pretty low on the totem pole, and it seems like one of the ways that Valve like the process they go about choosing people is not, okay, let's make a list of everybody that deserves it, select the top
Mhm.
people, and then find roles for them. It's the opposite. They have, okay, we want to have a 5-person panel. We want a host. We want 2 analysts that have hands-on experience, 1 color person, and then 1
Right.
wild card, or one person that has some other unique experience, something like that. And then they go through and start piecing it together. And then they ask some of the people that are hybrids, hey, would you rather cast or would you rather be a panelist? And they start filling in the roles. And then once it gets down to group stage casters, it's a little more, okay, who do we think are the strongest casters in these categories, and what have you. I don't know if they look at how many games you cast, or if they have some sort of quality metric system where they say this is how good they are if they go on feel. You don't even know how many people are in on this. Maybe it's just Ice Frog sitting there with a list on his computer and making a
Right.
quick Excel spreadsheet and doing some math, or is it a team of 10 people that evaluate
Well,
casts and look at your last lands? You really have no idea, and that's one of the most frustrating parts of the whole thing, I think.
right. Well, it's definitely not number of games casting. I think that if that were the criteria, there wouldn't
I think
have
that's a
Cobbler would have
metric
got
they keep
invited
in
without
mind.
Reddit.
I think that
I
does
think
matter,
that,
though.
but you got to. I mean, let's look at two casters who are conspicuously absent from the invite list in the form of like Mott and Blaze.
Yeah.
Both of the guys, them and Dakota included in this when he wasn't invited. I kind of went on a little bit of a rampage about how do you not invite the workhorses of English Dota right now? Like those guys, in addition to your typical studio casters, like I would say you do a lot of casting. Cap does a ton of casting right now.
Yeah.
Those guys are like workhorses. When there's a tournament at 3 a.m. that nobody wants to be fucking awake for,
Hmm.
you find Blaze or you find Mott doing the casting for those things. Like they're putting in the hustle. And to me, it was really frustrating that like I liked last year, for instance, when we saw a couple of casters like Dakota
Hmm.
get invited, and everybody was like, "Who is this guy?" And it was
Yeah.
because he had done some quality stuff and was just busting ass and got a chance to sort of have his big break there.
Yeah.
And I was kind of frustrated that we didn't see that for some of those workhorses of the Dota scene.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree with that a lot, and I can understand if and this is all conjecture.
Mhm.
I have no idea if
Of
that's
course.
actually how they go about filling the roles, but I think it kind of makes sense just sort of based
Mhm.
on the little bits of information we've heard here and there, and the order of that people were approached and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I think it's reasonable to expect that there are a finite amount of slots for just
Mhm.
English coverage. There's more English casters than there are any other. In
Yep.
every other scene, it's very established who the premier broadcasters are for China and Russia and what have
Right.
you. Um, but I think you still need to talk to those people. That's one thing that Riot
Mhm.
does incredibly well. If you have enough commends on their system, they'll send you a little figurine and a little card that says like, "Hey,
Mhm.
you're a great community member. Look at you. Keep on doing well." And people, they love that
Mhm.
shit. It makes them feel special and acknowledged, and like they actually contributed to something that matters. And that a lot of people that do this shit, that's part of what you're searching for. That's part of why we all like the limelight, because it's that
Right.
it legitimizes you a little bit. And some of it's not
Yeah.
just about going to the event or collecting the paycheck or getting the exposure or getting more Twitter followers, but it's to hear somebody say thanks. It's to hear the ultimate source praise you and
Right.
acknowledge that, hey, you've done some good work. How would you like to work our awesome event? It's getting that kind of proverbial pat on the back that really means a lot to a lot of the people. I
Right.
mean, it's a passion project for almost everyone that does esports work in casting, and that's where it just sucks to feel left out. I can empathize a little bit with that, not being invited last year, when you really are soaked into something and you feel like you have a good shot, and
Right.
it's just like, I wasn't fucking good enough. And watching Mott's vlog was fucking heartbreaking. It's hard to watch that and not tear up a little bit yourself. But at the same time, I was partially tearing up because it's just like, God damn, dude, you are handling this fucking perfect. I mean, like, I'm so glad the stars aligned and that Nikki and Shannon stepped up and helped him out. But it's just like, I got to do better. I got to work
Well,
harder. I want to do this, and if I want to do this, I just got to do it more and better. It's like, Mott, you are a fucking,
yeah.
you're a king, dude. Keep it up.
I
I'm
mean, I
glad.
agree. I agree completely. I think that the system is broken the way that it's done, and hopefully majors maybe fix that a little bit. I think LD's post was phenomenal, and the idea that even beyond, like, let's say that Valve has finite funds, which we all know is untrue. Let's say that Valve has to budget for TI, and it's too expensive to fly out additional people to sort of just be there for funsies. What would it cost them to give people that they think, hey, you've contributed to the community, a free VIP upgrade. You know, something that says at least thank you for
Yeah.
trying. Thank you for coming. We're not going to fly you out. We're not going to put you up in
Well,
the TI village, but
and
you can come hang out with us and have some snacks.
And that's what's interesting is that workshop creators that contributed to something I think that was part of a tournament or something pretty broad, they were given a free pass. It's probably a VIP pass of sorts. Like McCormick, one of our guys that worked on one of the cosmetics, and it's like, well, that's cool. I'm glad he was invited, but if he's invited, someone like Mott surely should be invited. He's contributed way more hours. McCormick does a whole bunch of other shit outside of the little bit of cosmetics work he does, you know? And I had that thought of, what if he just gave these guys just like a $2,000 travel stipend? Surely what Mott or a lot of the other casters on that same level have contributed to the game over the year between TI4 and TI5 has been a net gain for Valve over $2,000. You know, surely just Mott presenting the game, you know, being an ambassador for it in front of that many viewers and that consistent of a basis, that's what helps drive cosmetic sales, drives interest in the game, and keeps people coming back. It's hard to assert a true value to that, but I think it's more than, you know, even $1,000, just something that's like, hey, if you want to come, we can help pay for your hotel or book your flights or some shit. There are ways that you can acknowledge people's good work, and it doesn't really have to cost you that much. But
absolutely,
the Cobbler guy thing was interesting. I'm so glad he got invited. It was really weird that when I got my invite, I was so excited, and then it became pretty clear. Like as soon as I looked at, like, a lot of people had announced by then, and it was like, okay, well, this might be the last of the invites. He's like, what's going on here? So I felt really excited, but also really terrible, because I genuinely feel like Dakota and I are on a very similar level. We have very similar experience. We've been at it for a pretty comparable amount of time. We have a very similar just amount of Twitter followers and those kind of metrics in general. Why me instead of him, or vice versa? I feel like it should kind of be both or neither to some degree, if you're really doing it on a metric-based system. So it was just this odd mix of emotions that was quite the roller coaster that I would care not to repeat. You know, I'd rather just get a nice smiley email and then move on. But, whew, I'm
I think
sigh of relief.
Something else. While we're on the topic, before we get off of it, something that I think needs to be addressed. So first, I'll say this to get it out of the air and be honest. I prayed and hoped that I would get an invite to TI. I wanted one. I've done a show three times a week for an entire year. Probably the most consistent interviews in Dota. So I was like, maybe this is a chance. Maybe it'll happen. If they invite like they did last year, the possibility exists. That said, I knew it was a long shot. There's a lot of other folks that I think are way more deserving who didn't get an invite.
Right.
But what that means happens is it creates a really tough vacuum. And I'm sure you were aware of this when you were sort of worried about yours coming in, of you don't buy tickets because you don't know what's going to happen. If Valve hires you, you get an airplane ticket and you get a hotel, right? Which is pretty awesome. So those people wait. And so when Mott couldn't come, I mean, at the end of the day, and I'll put it in terms of myself, maybe I shouldn't have waited, but I did. And when I figured out I'm not getting an invite, I went and rushed to the website and I bought a round trip airplane ticket to TI. And that cost me around $800. And then I went to book hotels, and right now they're $300 a night to have a bedroom. So that means that my trip to TI is going to cost me somewhere in the ballpark of $225, $3,000, something like that. So I'm still working on plans, but there's a lot of content creators and stuff hustling to find themselves in that situation. And I think it opens up a huge gap in Dota 2 right now, which is content creators. Guys like Sir Action Slacks, love him or hate him, this community is polarized on the guy, but he makes a copious amount of content. He's on every single day. And I would argue with you that a lot of the fun that people have in Dota is a lot of them enjoy watching his stuff. It helps remind them to come back and play more. It helps keep them involved in the community. The same goes, have you heard of a podcast called Defense of the Patients?
No, that's a good name.
Okay.
I like that.
It is. So .p is a podcast. You guys can look it up. It's geared more towards the 2K and below players of Dota. And it's fun. These guys they're all 2K players, and they're just sort of talking about getting better in Dota. And they'll have guests come on and talk about how to get better. They'll have statisticians come on to talk about picks and just sort of opening people's eyes to what Dota is. And I think that they're really valuable because think about your average sub 2K player. They're
Right.
casuals, right? They don't spend a lot of time in the game. They're not super caught up in it like we are.
Yeah.
And then they watch a show like .p, and you have to imagine that once they start hearing about the cool stuff that is competitive Dota, well, they're going to start playing more. They're going to start to get into it. They're going to buy tickets to tournaments. So they are single-handedly increasing the market. And I think that guys like that deserve at least some recognition in the process because they're not casters and
Yeah.
they aren't interviewers or analysts, but they have a huge role inside of the community to make it a better and more populous place.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's tricky, and part of that is just esports being a young industry, still in quite a bit of an infancy stage to a large degree, and there just isn't that infrastructure there where you can. There just isn't a system in place to kind of collect that and scout that, and I mean, as people have brought up many a time, Valve has a very high ratio of employees to gross income. The amount of money the company makes versus how few people work there is really insane. And most of them are developers working on, technical based stuff. They don't have a community manager. That's something a lot of people have talked about over the past year or other years. Like when, if ever, are they going to commit to getting a community manager, someone that more interfaces with the community,
Thank you.
scouts for this stuff? Will they? And Valve just has a very different culture and approach to hiring, and they have a collective and they want to hire people that will fit into the culture that they've built in their community in a very specific way. And if you don't fit into that, it just doesn't work.
Let me put this in perspective for you. I've done shows for a while. I've developed a little bit of a following. The podcast gets about 60,000 people a month or so based on informatics, and it goes up and down.
Hmm.
I have never in my entire time playing Dota heard from or met anybody from Valve or a community, anybody involved with the community.
Hmm.
I have played HOTS to level 19. That's not very much. I've been doing it for about a month and a half. Yes, I had alpha, but I didn't use it. And I've already been contacted by 3 different Blizzard staff or community managers over like, hey, we're glad to have you on board. Like, what are you
Wow.
interested in? And to me, that's like a huge, oh my God, why am I making content for this when nobody seems to give a shit besides me and the fans? Versus this, where Blizzard's basically saying, we want you to be part of our family. The answer is Dota's a better game, and I love playing it. I can't stop. But and the pro scene's addicting, and it's got a really great esports crowd, and I
Yeah.
freaking love the people that I work with and that are fans. But it's just there's you look at it and you're like, why isn't Valve even thinking about doing this?
Yeah.
Because those messages, even just a message from, even if they don't buy you or VIP or anything, if Ice Frog sent a message said, hey, you're not coming to TI, but I think you do good work, like Slacks, myself, guys like that would just be like, oh shit, thank you. I'll hopefully next year.
Yeah.
You're the man.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it's I think it's somewhat comparable to companies like Valve realizing that esports is in a very organic way can be a very powerful marketing factor for your game if you can do it
Mm-hmm.
properly. It sort of sells itself because the community is so into it. And one thing this community is very receptive to is that shitty like, hey, esports, woohoo! Look at this new esports game, guys. We love esports. It's like, yeah, get the fuck out of here. We can tell you're phony. We can smell your bullshit from across the globe. Okay, we get it. You suck. Let's move on. But for Valve, it's really quite good, and it took a lot of risk for these companies to really embrace that. It took Riot a while in terms of how long their game was going before they really started going heavy into it. It took a while for that whole thing for I'm stuttering here because I'm thinking of a quote from Bart from High Res. I saw in an interview where he said it. Just recently, as a game developer, we've been able to associate a positive monetary value with esports features. Like, I can make a
Mm.
case that, hey, if we spend X amount of development hours on a really robust, really great spectator feature for this client so people can watch, analyze, get numbers, and really talk about the game in a cool way, it will make people more interested in the game and keep them as recurring customers that will buy more shit and in the long run make us more money, way more than what we pay the developers to do this. And he said that's a pretty recent. This was like a year ago, but that was still a
Mm.
recent development. And I feel like a lot of this small content that you're talking about, these community contributors, similar to workshop creators, though on a different front, are a similar thing where it's just going to take some time to kind of see that value attributed to their functionality. Though it's
Mm.
always hard to apply metrics to qualitative stuff like that. You
Well,
know.
and we hit a tough time in the market, and I think that this is something that we haven't really talked about on Reddit at all. is the idea that, so let's talk, like Mott and Blaze have put in a ton of work, and some folks have said things like, why did this caster, who maybe is a little bit of a bigger name but hasn't done a lot this year, get invited over them? And the answer is because they're more popular, because they established themselves 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah. They
So
also
there
just
is
simply
that
have more
veteran
reach.
factor. They
Yeah.
have tons of reach, and like, and so there's one interviewer at it. Hotbit got the interview job. I did not, and I didn't think that I would. I have 2,000 Twitter followers. Hotbit has 58,000 or something like that, and his reach is insanely strong. So of course they're going to invite somebody who has a stronger reach and more time invested in sort of esports, whether or not they've done a ton of work for the year.
And
And I
it's
think that's
also
okay. That's logical.
it's also someone that's more established. It's three things. He's more established. He's worked for Valve before, and when he did, it was received well, which is good. They know he's not going to freak
That's a
out or
huge
do
one.
something crazy. And three, there is a degree of quality over quantity. If you work, I mean, the GD studio is a pretty good example of that. You know, if you only work a few events a year, but they're awesome blockbuster events, people will still really like you overall. Dota Cinnamon is another great example.
Right.
You do 2 Captain's Draft tournaments. They don't run tournaments that often, but people still associate that whole concept as a positive thing to them, even though it's not a regular piece of content like a Star Ladder or something that's
Right.
more consistent. So I don't know. There was a long time where I thought with shows consistency was key. Having something that is every Monday at a set time so people know when to tune in and you can really get that momentum going was the way to build a show. But I think that is a way to do it, but I really believe content is king, especially in the Dota community. Consistency does not seem to be key. It didn't really work for the Dota Radio morning show. The episodes that worked were the ones when we had big guests. It had nothing to do with the fact that we were on every fucking Wednesday at the same time. Nobody seemed to give a shit. They just seemed to care about what the topics were, what the drama was, and what kind of a headline we had.
I mean, yeah, and that's absolutely true. I do a show that's sort of the esports roundup and maybe get 1,000 to 2,000 hits across the board. I get Envy to stop by, and we get 30,000 on YouTube alone. So that makes perfect sense, and it's about growing the brand. My only argument in the whole TI invite thing is it should be done sooner so that the talent who didn't get invited can get there at a price that's reasonable, and B, if you see someone up and coming, like, Heroes of the Storm and other brands do, like you said, Riot does, send them something. Say you're doing a good job. Now's not the time, but we really like your content. And I think that that's all that a lot of those content creators that I talk to out there ask for is something that says, hey, we like what you're doing.
A little recognition goes a long way. We can wrap up the conversation. I have one little anecdote. I remember my first StarCraft project, and I threw in the towel, and that was when I kind of went out on my own and started doing Zyori stuff after a year of running StarCraft tournaments and shit. And I thought just nobody really cared about it. Yeah, we get like 50 to 200 viewers a week, but it takes a lot of time. It's not making any money. Like, what's the fucking point of this shit? Nobody really cares. And after I stopped it, people were like, man, that was pretty cool. It was a consistent run of little micro tournaments. And like 6 months to a year later, I'm at an MLG, and I'm talking. I don't know if were around, followed any kind of StarCraft stuff, but there were some guys that worked for Google that owned this team called Quantic, StarCraft 2 Quantic. And I was talking to them, and I was just sort of like in awe of the fact that, dude, I'm talking to fucking Googlers here. Like, this is serious. Right. These guys are for real. They have like real money to put into their project. This is awesome. And the guy didn't know who I was, and we were just chit-chatting. After about 5 minutes, I just, casually said Hypercrew, the name of my turn. So he goes, Hypercrew, I know those tournaments. That was you? Nice. And he was like, oh, dude, that shit was awesome. Why'd you stop doing it? And that was just like the moment I realized the silent majority is a thing. Not that it was a big majority, but there are still a couple hundred people that really fucking liked that shit. And it's important to hear that recognition, and it's not even an ego thing as much as I just want to know you guys like what I'm doing, so I'm not fucking wasting my time. Just somebody tell me that this isn't a waste of my time so that we can keep doing it. And that's sort of what viewer numbers affirm. If there's a couple hundred people watching this, it's like, okay, this is somewhat interesting. It's worth a while to put some effort into this. When you have like 5 to 10 viewers, it's like, is this just a failed pilot? Like, what's going on here?
Right.
Why am I sitting here doing this?
Absolutely. I think recognition is king. I do want to ask you a question before we get off of TI completely.
Please.
And that is this. You saw the invites that came out, and I haven't gone over the list today, but as far as I can tell, the only English language, I don't know why I said that, the only English language female invited to work a panel or any position from the hiring announcements is Shivar. And I assume that from previous experiences, they'll put her in sort of a host seat or something of that sort. When do you think we're going to actually see a breakthrough of women being in analyst positions, in being caster positions, and being allowed to be on the mic more than just a host, which I think is a failing. Like if you watch the NFL, they do the same thing, right? It's all guys in the upstairs, and they go to the field for the interview with the woman. I don't get why that is. And do you think that we can beat that somehow? Is it a lack of talent, or is it a old boys mindset?
I think it's a combination of things. Some of it is just a numbers thing. I'll say that despite Merlini from afar. There just aren't a lot of girls in the space. You know, it's like 10% or something like that. There's not that many of them to choose from, and the few that there are naturally get pushed into this sort of reclusive or very showy type personality. It seems to go in two extremes. You're either doing the fluffiest bunny type thing and just loving the attention because you're one of the few girls with jubblies that you can shake around, or you're like, fuck that, I'm not even going to plug in my mic and I'm just going to play and make some generic name and just be an anonymous person so people don't harass me. And that neither of those really encourage the kind of work that goes into doing like what Shiver does, hosting or casting or whatever, because both of them are kind of a distraction and out of focus. I don't know that Shiver is actually going to be hosting all that much. Red Eye, I don't know if there's going to be a panel for the group stage or if it's just the main event. Obviously, Red Eye's hosting the main event. If there's a group stage panel, maybe Red Eye's doing it, maybe Shiver's doing it. I have no idea. So maybe there's going to be two hosts and they'll work different shifts. Maybe Shiver's doing more color stuff. Maybe we haven't heard anything about Casey. Maybe Shiver's doing some like floor reporter type stuff. I have no fucking clue, man. Your guess is as good as mine. I wish I knew I mean, I don't know who I'm casting with for the group stages. Some people don't know exactly if they're casting the group stages. So there's still a lot of question marks, and there still could be people that are invited that haven't said anything.
That's true.
Last year, Lumi, for example, waited at least a couple days, if not a week, and he just had some tweet like, "Oh yeah, I was invited a while ago. I just, come on, guys, don't be freaks." Maybe he got invited this time. Maybe he didn't. We have no idea. There's still a couple people that could pop up, or even last time there were really last-minute invites, like Ryu Borez and Gerg. They came in like last minute as fuck. So
that's true.
Still very small chances, but I don't think
still
it's
possible.
Too likely to change.
I just often wonder if it's a symptom of the system that we use. That we
you had a more specific question. Oh yeah, I got off track there. So yeah, to the whole women thing, I really I've thought this for a while. I think in esports in general, but particularly Dota, there's a lot of space for women. There's a lot of room for people to do not necessarily the same practical skills that Shiver has as a host, but the same process that Shiver goes through as an individual of, I'm not going to make my stream all about donations. I'm not going to wear super low-cut shirts and make it about my boobs. I'm going to make it about I work hard and I really enjoy this and I love the game, and that's what's important. The fact that I'm a girl and I'm reasonably attractive is secondary to the game, and there just aren't that many girls that do that. I think Kelly Milkies is an example of a girl who doesn't do that kind of cam girl thing that I'm talking about, that is a very good at her job and plays a very active role. It's just not one that's very public that you get to see very often. But she's an example of a very respected team manager that has a pretty good reputation as, in terms of what her players say about how well she takes care of the team. It's just how often do we get to hear from team managers and really see that powerful woman's role. I don't know, man. It's really tricky. It's hard. You have to have a really thick skin. You have to really want to do it, and you have to be really fucking good at the game. And maybe there's more girls coming in now, but I'd love to get a breakdown of like the highest MMR female players. Approach them one by one and say, hey, are you interested in learning how to cast? Because you've got the raw skill. If you have a voice and you're interested in using it, there might be some potential here. Right. Where are these people? How do we find them? How do we bring these responsible young ladies out of the woodwork to step up and start doing some casting or analyzing or what have you? I don't know. Can we put up the bat signal? Can we put up the girl signal?
Yeah, no, I think it's just look out for talent and then help market it. And I think that's
I'm trying to do it with my tights. Every event I go to, I'm trying to show off the ass so more girls will come in, but it's not working. So I need it. We need a new plan. We need a plan B here.
So what you're saying is using Zyori's ass as a recruitment tool has not been panning out. I respect.
Not to
Okay.
my unless there's an influx of girls that no one has told me about because they're trying to keep the girls from themselves. That is a possible reality here, but to my knowledge, it has not been increasing the female population, unfortunately.
That's funny.
You know,
Annie Droid is good.
it is what it is. Annie actually has been casting. She's been on that. I think, are you on there as well? That, what is it? The Dota Cast site or Dota Cast It or
Dota Casters.
I think she's on there.
DotaCasters.com.
Yeah, I think she's casted some games, getting some practice in.
I mean, that's what it is too. It's just practicing.
What do you make of that website, by the way? Is that a cool thing? It seems like an interesting idea,
Well,
but it's all about the execution.
it is an interesting idea. They
They
sponsored my show for a month, which was nice of them. And I think that the idea is sound. I just don't know how you convert it into a self-supported business model, right? Because I think there's a huge market for having an amateur caster cast your game. Like as an amateur player, as somebody, actually myself, as someone who plays in amateur tournaments with my team regularly, I absolutely love when a caster casts my game because me and my friends all open a beer and we go back afterwards and watch the replay and laugh and joke. And it feels, I don't know, it feels really cool to have a caster cast your game. Yeah. So there is a market to going to a website and paying $5 to have an amateur caster come do your game. And there's a benefit to the caster that they get an easy demo. The hard part is like when you get to the level of hiring a professional, what is the market to go hire you, Zyori, to cast a game for someone's amateur game?
How much would people pay for me to cast a random replay?
Well, and that's the real question. Like,
I want to hear numbers in chat. How much would you guys pay for me to cast a single replay of yours? Because I don't. If that guy approached me and said, "How much would you want per game?" I don't know what I would say. I would probably say like $20. I mean, that sounds like a decent.
I think you probably get that.
That's like a ballparky. That's a nice round figure, you know. But that sounds like a lot. I wouldn't pay that for me.
Well,
to
and
cast
that's it too. Is it's very tough, especially the folks who would want to like. Do they just have $20 or $30 lying around to hire you for 45 minutes? And that's a tough one.
You'd have to pay me to cast my games. Damn, what a slam! And a lot of 3-2-2s. Okay, so $3.22 exactly. I don't know if that's a good use of my time.
It's not really. I think you probably make more doing BTS games.
See, but
anyway, so.
People tell me, though, there's probably a few crazies out there that would pay a lot, as just a little aside. There probably would be people that would pay $50 for me to cast their game. Not to insult anyone that feels like they would, but I think that is a crazy amount of money for me to cast your game. I'm sure there are at least a few people out there that would pay that.
I think the perspective is, if they're a fan of what you do, and this is another one, too. Like, you know that when I got started in Dota, one of the first big tournaments that I watched every single game was a Star Ladder that you covered. And if you associate someone's voice with professional esports, it'd be kind of cool to have them commentate on a game that means a lot to you. So if I won a championship, maybe I'll hire you to cast my replay. Would I pay a fortune for like Toby Wan to do a replay for me? Probably, if I'm a huge super fan, because I want to always have a copy of this on my hard drive of like, this is that one time I won a tournament and Toby casted it. That's just kind of a cool thing. But I don't think it's a regular thing that would happen every single week, and that's where the business model sort of breaks down.
Yeah, I mean, if there was actually a market of people to pay $50 per game for casters to cover it, I think a lot of people I think you could actually build a website where people, more mainstream casters, would be like, hey, if I had some free time, like maybe it would be fun, and that's. Right. It is nice to know, like, I know I've heard this before about people like Leonard Nimoy, for example, or someone that's really very famous and has just a massive demand for anything that they've signed. You know, they really don't mind giving that kind of stuff to fans that really appreciate it. But when you just give it away, people don't appreciate it and they just fucking sell it. And what they've said is, you know, if I charge $200 for an autograph, but I make it a little bit more of a personalized thing, I talk to them for 5 minutes or whatever it is, and I write a nice little note, and it's on a really nice picture, and it's obviously a lot of money, but the people that pay that much really, really appreciate it, and you know it's like going to someone that's going to cherish that, and it's not just going to go up on eBay in 5 minutes because that's like kind of what it's worth, you know? I always thought that was kind of interesting. It's like a way to weed out people that are, you know, just going to go throw it away. What are you giggling at?
There's a viewer in chat who said I casted. I've done 2 Irish casts in my life. either for challenges or for maybe I was drunk or something. And one of the viewers in chat actually was a player in one of those games and said he highly enjoyed it. And I started chuckling because I was like,
That's funny.
my Irish cast is always entertaining.
That's good. That's good. Oh man, I really want to do a flamboyant cast, but I don't think it would be received well. I think it would be
I
received
think,
like the Indian accents at the summit too, which was not
yeah, I think it's
positive.
probably a bad idea. It's probably a
But
bad
I
idea.
really think it would be funny, and I also don't think gay people would be offended by it. It would just be the stupid white knights that are like, "That's really offensive to gay people." Most gay people I
But
know have great senses
and
of humor and think that
and let
shit
us
is
also
hysterical.
remember, just because someone's flamboyant doesn't mean that they're gay.
That's true.
So,
There is
it's
a
just
bit of a
it's a
correlation, but
subculture of
that's
folks who
true.
talk differently.
That
That's
is
all.
true, actually. Lindsey Graham, he's totally straight. He's got to be, right?
Right? No, my goodness. So that draws us back into politics.
It does. It does. So we're around an hour mark, maybe a little bit past. We can go for a little bit longer. I want to mention this deep web thing, and maybe it's not
Yes.
worth talking about too much. I want to mention it because when it happened, it was really big news, and I didn't feel prepared to talk about it in the week where it was really relevant. And then I kind of pushed it off because there was other shit that I needed to talk about related to events and the hubs. So it's kind of a big deal. Deep web shit I find really, really fascinating. I'm not really that familiar with it. I'm not a big Tor user. I'm not really hanging out
Mhm.
on the deep web. I'm not the kind of guy that orders illegal drugs from strangers and encrypts my address and sends it into the internet. I'm not fucking around with anything remotely similar to that shit. But basically, the guy that started Silk Road, which was one of the biggest, most established deep web marketplaces where you could buy all sorts of illegal shit, the guy Ross Ulbricht was arrested a while ago and convicted, and they gave him life in prison, which was pretty extreme, basically the
Yeah,
maximum
very much
for
so.
all the charges. And there's a really good documentary that just came out like 2 weeks ago. It's super, super
Mhm.
recent, very relevant about the case and the whole concept. It's done by Alex Winter. He's the guy that's not Keanu Reeves in Bill and Ted.
Uh,
Keanu
Wait, say that
Reeves,
one more time.
he's, Bill and Ted?
Yeah.
He's the one that's not Keanu Reeves.
Oh, I know who you're talking
The
about.
blonde guy, Alex Winter. He made a really good
Yeah.
documentary about Napster as well.
Hmm.
It really breaks into the issue well and describes the whole thing better than I possibly could summarize. But there's a lot of questionable tic tacs that the American government used to identify him, and
Hmm.
the government basically claims that it's a very clear-cut case that he is the Dread Pirate Roberts, the guy that's in charge of the website, and he claims that there's a lot of people that are the Dread Pirate Roberts, where it's a shared account. A lot of people use it. He is the founder. He is one of the people that has access to the account, but he claims that some of the shit that was on his computer, the journal and all this shit, was planted by
Right.
one of the other guys to throw him under the bus, and that it's not all him. It's pretty fucking crazy. Basically, I want to bring it up because I would encourage people to read about it, educate yourself about the topic. The concept of the deep web and that section of illegal drug trade is really fascinating because it's actually a much safer way for people to engage in illegal drug transactions because it's all through the mail system, so people don't shoot each other. You just pay somebody some bitcoins, they mail you some shit inside of an old cassette tape or some other hidden contraption, and it's one of those weird kind of moral quandaries of, well, do we really want to encourage a marketplace where you can just buy any substance you want from any random Joe Schmo on the internet where there's just reviews like an illegal Yelp? But even
Right.
though we don't really want to do that, it's still better than what's happening where people are just out on the streets killing each other and in really unsafe situations. It's a noodle cooker. It really gets you thinking. So I don't know if you have anything you want to say about it or add
Yeah,
or
I
get
wouldn't
to.
say that it's particularly safe purchasing. I understand the argument. I think that my worry about it is so the deep web does exist outside of what we call our typical web, right? I mean, but when you talk about our
Yes.
web, it's the idea of Google Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer. That's what our web is.
The
They're
searchable
browsers that
web. Yeah.
find registered sites. Yes. So the dark web still exists in terms of like internet space. And just because something's not searchable because it's not registered, does that make it all that much different from, say, a website that's registered like YouTube? And then my question is, they arrested him. They gave him life in prison because he ran this website. He wasn't actually selling drugs. He wasn't actually selling prostitution. He wasn't actually selling hits. He simply created the
The marketplace.
distribution system or the marketplace.
Yeah.
So then the question is, Does that mean that if I create a website or you create a website that people use in a way opposite of what we intended initially, whether or not he intended that is, we can't prove it. Can the government come in, search, seize, and put us in prison because somebody else chose to abuse our system? That's where my worry is. The other big worry for me is that they seized and possessed all of his servers and things like that, and said because he refuses to state ownership over the website, he doesn't have any legal rights for search and seizure warrants, if that makes sense. So they've sort of using this sort of loophole where, well, you say you're innocent, therefore you don't have any rights to your shit. And I think that
Yeah.
that's another interesting
Well,
side of like
also
this
the way that
process.
they seized the servers, they don't know how they found them, and I don't think they were in America. They were in other countries, so there
Right.
were questionable operations used to even seize them. And
Hmm.
the reason they found him, or were even really suspicious of him, is because they identified a package that was addressed to him that had like 5 or 10 fake IDs in it, and he was using the fake IDs to buy servers under pseudonyms and that kind of stuff. It's really crazy, the whole idea. And one of the things that they talk about in this documentary, I think it's just called the Deep Web. I think that's actually the name of it. I think it's deepwebthemovie.com. It wasn't just a marketplace. It was also a community. It was a hardcore libertarian community where the Dread Pirate Roberts was writing manifesto. It was a very libertarian-based culture, and there were a lot of articles about like know what you're putting in your body. This is the safe way to use this kind of drug. And again, it's this weird, we don't really want to encourage people to do drugs, but if you're completely dead set on doing it, there are ways to do it without getting fucking hepatitis or AIDS or
Right.
nasty infections. And there were a lot of positive aspects to the forums and the political discussions and the other parts that were going on there. And what makes this different from everything else is on the deep web is the anonymous part. I mean, the dark
Right.
web is the vast majority of the internet, but most of it is just bullshit. It's just tables and computer shit and like images and just stuff that when you type into Google, it doesn't parse it because it's not readable or useful. Most of it's garbage, but there are little pockets where you can pop in there, and because it's not searchable, you can be anonymous through the use of Tor and various other
Right.
softwares to encrypt information, and that means you can essentially, not completely, it's like an arms race on both sides, but ways to secretly conduct stuff. And of course, it does encourage criminal behavior. But one of the things that the documentary talks about is just because something is private, does that inherently make it bad? And it makes a case
Right.
for the right to privacy. And the analogy he uses is you go into your bathroom and you shut the door. Nobody questions that
Right.
because that's your private place. I could be in there shooting up with heroin, or I could be taking a shit, but either way, everyone knows that you're not coming in there while I'm in the bathroom. That's my space. And he said that the
Yeah.
deep web is similar to that, that even though people can use it for bad things, and we should try to find ways find ways to fight people that use it for stuff like kiddie porn or whatever really
Right.
terrible stuff you decide to draw the line at, there is still an aspect of privacy that you can't assume that someone's doing bad shit just because they want to do it anonymously. That's not enough to say you're suspicious. We can profile you. Have Tor on your computer, therefore we should
Right.
suspect you're up to no good. That's not right. That's a violation of our rights. So the documentary kind of takes the whole thing to another level in the philosophical argument of privacy and how far that extends through digital means versus just physical means and that kind of shit. It's all very fascinating. Honestly, I feel like a lot of it is really too dense for me to comment on
Right.
intelligently. It's a whole nother ball game. But Google it, folks. The name is Ross Ulbricht. That's the guy that was sentenced. Now, it was just the first sentencing, so there's an appeals process. Certainly, he's going to
Right.
appeal all sorts of stuff. So you never know. It could turn around, but it seems like they want to try to make a real example out of him. So that kind of sucks. That's a little fucked up.
Absolutely. So before we end, though, I think that we have to talk about the biggest thing that happened this week, and which I think is a little bit funny that a lot of stuff has happened, but only one's really hit the news, and more importantly, has hit the argument forums
Hmm.
like crazy. And that's the reason that I'm losing Facebook friends at a rapid pace. Supreme SCOTUS confirmed that marriage is now marriage. There's no such thing as gay marriage and straight marriage. It's just
Hmm.
marriage, and that was kind of a big deal this week, man.
Yeah, it really was. As someone on my feed pointed out, there's still a ways to go for certain rights. They said, especially for
Yeah,
the T and the Q of that community, but um,
absolutely.
it's absolutely huge. It's pretty groundbreaking. As many have said, it's about fucking time for America. Australia is one of the modern countries that still hasn't
Hmm.
actually done this. So woohoo, we beat somebody in the race to not be completely awful. Um, I'm beyond excited. I had no idea that they were that close to really coming to a final decision. It's crazy to think that that was a 5-4 vote, though. That really took a lot of deliberation and time and thought,
Yeah.
because I think to obviously not most people, but to a lot of people, that's a no-brainer. What's there to even think about? People should
Right.
have equal rights, you know? And it's nice now that it just takes away so much fuel from that other side of the argument of people that say the ridiculous shit about how it defiles my marriage, knowing that it's been
Right.
redefined. Shut the fuck up. Just you have the power to define it however the fuck you want. It's your union. That's the whole fucking point, you ninny. You know, and now you can kind of just throw the Uncle Sam card at him, you know, show him a dollar bill and they're like, see this motherfucker? Freedom. I can smell it, you know?
Well, and I think an interesting argument that's come out of this is a lot of folks. Obviously, you have this extreme right that's now sort of a minority in the general sense, saying it's an abomination, it's not okay, and then you have everyone else saying, well, this just makes sense. Like, why would you take away someone's rights? So my question is, why is the government involved with marriage in the first place? I get that we get a tax break for being married, but Zyori, that's a relic from back when only one spouse used to work and the other raised the kids. Everyone works now. So this sort of like tax break for marriage seems old fashioned. And the idea that the government can tell me who or who cannot get married also seems strange and old fashioned to me. Like, I
Yeah.
think that that's a big part of this is
Well,
like, why is the government even involved?
if you recall, Bush proposed the concept of adding an amendment to the Constitution that defines marriage
Right.
explicitly as a male and a female union, which is insane. Why would you add that to the Constitution? Like the government actually legislating something that is, to me, that's wild that that was even a suggested
Mhm.
idea that wasn't a total backfire. Obviously, it never happened, but oof, well,
Oh,
what
so
a caduzy.
first, I do want to touch something here real quick. And
Please.
Town Killer D brings it up that, why is it in the text code, separation of church and state, blah, blah, blah. That's not, if I remember correctly, and it's been a while since I taught history, but that's not in the Constitution. Separation of church and state is an idea that was presented. I think it was Thomas Jefferson wrote, and it might have been Ben Franklin, wrote a letter that had that defined in it, but it wasn't actually put into the Constitution initially. So keep in mind that term is not necessarily out there. It's simply we cannot support a religion established or state established religion, if that makes sense. So that's two different things. We won't get into it. That's like a deep level advanced government class. But I think that the fact is that this is it. True is why is the government regulating marriage in the first place? I think the interesting thing for SCOTUS was, again, it was 5-4, like you said,
Hmm.
but we haven't had a vote that wasn't 4-5-5-4 in a long time. I mean, this
That's
is
true.
a symptom of Supreme Court justices are appointed for life, and some of them still have a very old-fashioned mentality.
That was the worst part about the Bush presidency for me, was that he got to put two people into the Supreme Court, and the two that he chose, I was not a fan of, especially
Mm.
the God, I don't even remember their names, to be honest. Who's the really liberal one? Is it Alito that he appointed? The one that's really terrible, Bush appointed, and
I couldn't
oh
say off the top of
God,
my head.
yeah.
I am weak in my constitutional
You
justice
are right
or
about the
constitutional law
separation of
section.
church and state thing, though. It was Thomas Jefferson, and it was a phrase he used to express an understanding of the intent and function of the
Hmm.
Establishment Clause and Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment. So it was, yeah, just kind of lingo that they used. It's not actually written in the Constitution or anything like that.
Yep. So, and it's become sort of a rallying cry in a lot of ways. The idea of, you can't have a nativity set outside of the state capitol because that's church and religion. And the argument's not, it's because they're together. The argument should be, well, is that the state supporting a established religion over another? And that's sort of, I think, where the constitutional discussion needs to be had.
Yeah.
So, and keep in mind, guys, we're talking about this
Sorry.
from a very liberal context.
God.
I'm
Sorry, I
actually
got
not.
sucked into Wikipedia for a second there. My
You're
bad.
fine.
Oof.
I'm not really that liberal. Like I have a very strong liberal social liberalist policy, but I absolutely hope to God, Zyori, that the Republicans do not go bat crazy over this and just let it be and focus on other
Yeah.
things for the election. Because if they stick on this, they are done. Like they can't win. They cannot win if they fight this in Obamacare for another 4 years.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And I'm part of that demographic that you've talked to me about, that I identify with parts of the Republican ideals, but I just can't align with the party because it's filled with so many crazy old school conservatives that are just against so many social issues that I don't even consider issues anymore. You know, like gay rights, abortion, these are two things that are fucking solved. You got to just get over it and move on. If you're still talking about like getting rid of women's right, the women's right to choose, you're just I'm everything else. I'm done with you. You know, I can't get over that. These kind of basic things. So it's hard to identify with the party, but I definitely am not super liberal either. I mean, I was in college thinking like, Jesus Christ, this is the definition of your super liberal university professor. Just, I don't know. I'm a little bit sensitive. I'm not a super bleeding heart liberal like some sort of think that I am, but I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think I'm fairly moderate, kind of weird. I'm fairly libertarian for the most part.
I think a lot of, I don't know if we'd even call you millennials anymore. I don't know what your
Hey, I'm a
20-something
millennial.
generation
Don't
is
insult
called.
me.
All right. So, but I think that a lot of these up and coming recent college grad millennials, this new era of voters and kids in general are a very different breed. Like the thing that blew me away, and this shocked me when I was at the summit, because I don't get a lot of time to hang out with younger people like most Dota players are. And the conversations I heard by almost every single team as I drove them to and from the venue regarding diet choices, making the right food choices, managing their health. Like that's not a conversation that I ever had with anybody that I knew when I was 18 years old. Like we were like, dude, you guys want to hit the In-N-Out burger? It's gonna be awesome. Like nobody cared. I went surfing and then I ate junk food. And like kids today have a totally different priority system. They talk about recycling. They talk about eco-friendly. They talk about hybrids. And like that wasn't even on our mind back in the day, man. These kids are mind-blowing to me is how much more open-minded, how much more globally aware they are today than I was when I was the same age.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one of the last bit of the generation that remembers a time before you could just type in any question to Google and get a pretty reasonable response. You know, now anytime I'm like, I cook the chicken for 10 minutes on one side, 20 on the other. Like it's just everything's right there at the tip of your finger. And it's crazy how that is going to influence this younger generation that have just always had access to this kind of information and how they'll choose to utilize it. And if it breeds this level of efficiency that is just going to be off the charts, you know, in a couple decades from now, as these people are fucking interfacing with computers, you know, like Google Glass and a contact lens, shit like that. It's going to get crazy, Toffees. You can already get a little implant and let it swipe the door, you know, have a little reactor thing there, and you can use it to swipe the door with your hand. You can do some crazy shit if you're willing to get cut open. You know, you can go buck wild, man. Technology's crazy. There's a lot of cool shit out there. We live in interesting times. I guess everybody always feels that way, but I'm glad it's still true now.
Well, if you compare what I have, like what we have and take for granted now to like what I had when I got my first piece, like I had one of the first PCs released because my dad was in like sales and marketing and had to have a home PC. So when I was like 14, I think it was, like we got a PC in our house and it was all MS-DOS. And I remember getting my first video game that had, I think it was 14 or 20 floppy disks is how you ran it. And you had to switch it out every
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was a huge stack.
I had an early version of Quake that was 8. That was the most I ever had.
Okay. I think it was there was a SWAT game that was super cool, but you had to change it out all the time. Versus now, like my cell phone has more computing power than my first PC did. And that just blows my mind. And I wonder, as I have a son who's 9 months old, and I sit there at night holding him, and I look at him and I think to myself, like, what is he gonna see? Is he gonna get to take my vacation on a cruise ship is like around the Greek islands, which I might do next year because it'll be super cheap with the crash of their economy. But his vacation, is it gonna be a cruise ship around Mars? Like what's next, man?
Yeah, it's wild. Space travel, we'll see. I feel like as much as I'm really into space traveling, I think NASA's a really good thing. You know, I remember talking to this really liberal girl once, and more than a girl. She was a college graduate, I should say, and she's really against NASA funding. Just like, no, we gotta cut NASA funding. I'm like, listen, NASA provides a lot of good things. She was like, what? So we can look at stuff in space? I'm like, that exploration of knowledge yields a lot of positive byproducts. You like microwaves, right? Yeah, those are pretty cool. You use that a lot. Who do you think invented that? It sure as hell wasn't Sears. You know, it was fucking NASA. There's a lot of other things they've invented that I've
Right.
forgotten about now. There are a lot of good examples of things they've come up with, and it's making this case of just how you have to encourage innovation. And
Hmm.
I remember she said to me, "Well, maybe they could just get the money for the good ideas that they have and innovate that way." And I'm
Ah,
like, "That is not how innovation works. If everybody knew you had a good idea before you knew it was a good idea, then nobody would have bad. Are you fucking mental? What is wrong with you?
right.
God damn it!" And it just like slurping that shit up, and I just don't get it. You know, I can't. I have no tolerance for that kind of mental stupidity when you're talking like you know what's going on. Ugh.
Man, I get in that fight with people who talk about GMOs on a daily basis.
Oh
My
my.
wife's a molecular biologist, by the way, so I
So
have
are
a
you
we have a
you're
unique insight into it.
anti GMO, right?
No, I think that GMOs, if done responsibly, are an absolute necessity to further the proliferation of
Right.
humanity.
So you're
Like, I don't think
against
we can survive without it.
so you're against the people that would call themselves anti-GMO. I've heard other people
I
explain it that way, where it's just like the people that are like,
yeah,
no, GMOs are they're going to ruin the next generation of health, and it's like, listen, you are
yep.
so far down the rabbit
The
hole of
ones who
bullshit.
like slam stuff onto Facebook that's like, oh, this is, you can't digest this particle that's being put into this product and it's going to destroy our world, which is ridiculous. Like, to put it in perspective, and I might have talked about this before once. My wife worked for a genetics company for a while, and they sat there and they racked their heads as scientists about how to fix an issue where there was a pest. I forgot what pest it was, decimating corn crops in a part of the world. And they said, well, we could do more poisons. And said, well, that's not the eco-friendly answer. What else can we do? They said, well, there's a protein that humans can't taste that these bugs can, and they don't like it. They think it's sour or tart. Why don't
Hmm.
we just put that into the corn, and then we don't even have to use pesticides anymore? And that's the process that's being taken on right now. And to me,
Yeah.
that seems like a much better idea. A protein that I can't digest that passes through me without any problems,
Yeah.
removing the need for pesticide. I mean, that's a positive.
That's a good trade-off. Yeah, and I think one of the issues with this whole debate is that people in America we have this it's human nature, but in America media, I think in particular, we have this really bad tendency to take a really intense gray issue matter that has a lot of factors into a good or bad, black and
Mm-hmm.
white, for or against. It's like, well, I'm for parts of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Monsanto has done some bad things and some Walmart
Yeah.
like things. I think they've got too large an economy of scale, too much
Mm-hmm.
power, and that is an issue with GMOs, but that doesn't mean that GMOs themselves are a bad thing. So I think the concept is good. The process in which we go about it right now is underdeveloped and monopolized, and I think that's an
Right.
issue. So when you break it in half, it's like there's a good and a bad side to it. But I think the concept of GMOs, I totally agree with you, is it's just going to be a necessity. Overpopulation is a thing. There comes a point where
Mm-hmm.
food and scarcity and economics and shit's going to hit the fan, dude. At some point, you're going to need a bike. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's an imperative and it's a necessity. And I think that's, if you can genetically breed a crop that grows in the desert and can feed 10 million people, like, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
But that's just me on a tangent because my father got married once to this woman who was a pinup model and super annoying, and she was one of those GMO acolyte, like anti-GMO acolytes. And I literally just wanted to, like, every time she posted on Facebook, it made me just want to like rip my hair out and rage at her, but I couldn't because she was the idiot married to my father.
Got a few
Fortunately,
of
they're
those
divorced now, so
in my
I
family.
was able to write her a scathing response and then unfriend her.
That's good. That's a good feeling. And I got a few people like that. I just feel bad for the people that are always posting clear clickbait. And I just think, has no one told you what clickbait is? Do you not realize that this is a stupid shit article? Like they'll post some article
Mm.
about a robbery and be like, these animals, they beat that. I'm just like, yeah, crimes happen. Why are you dwelling on it and sharing it with people? Why don't we just not do that and talk about, why don't you just report on the positive things that are going on in your life? Because this is all I see of you now. You're in New Jersey, I'm in California. How about we get some positivity? And I realized the other day I just need to fucking defriend those people. I mean, what they're just pissing me off, you know? It's no good. Oh god, Toffees, we
Cool.
got to wrap this up, man. What else do you
Absolutely.
want to talk about? Is there anything else any stone you want to uncover before we close this chapter?
I think that's it. I think we got a little extra stuff in there. I think that I talked
Yeah.
about the news and my desire for Valve to have some community management and talk to people. I hope,
Ah, yeah.
I will say that I plan on being at TI. I hope that I can raise the money for it. I'm looking at Airbnb, trying to get the cash together. I'd like to do some interviews. So if I go, guys, if you're watching, look me up when I'm out there. I am going to pretty much be around the entire week. So if you want to get drinks, if you want to spend time together, I would love to chat with anybody who wants to. So hit me up for sure.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you, man.
Assuming I can raise the $2,000 to go, which I think we should be able to.
Yeah, well, good luck. That seems like a pretty reasonable amount. I think people might be able to get behind that, and also just seeing the genuine nature of folks like Shannon and Nikki, I think that may help encourage people to, chip in a little bit. We've sort of seen the powerful impact that can have on people when you can help them out in such a big manner like this. So good luck to you, sir. Hopefully people are generous, because what you do is good. It might be underappreciated right now, but it'll take some time.
I had never actually considered crowdfunding. I meant like I'm just trying to like pick up some extra jobs and some side work to put the cash together.
I thought you were implying crowdfunding.
That's not a no. Okay. I mean, I suppose I have a Patreon account for the show, so I suppose that could be used. It's not. Why didn't I think of that? That's not a bad idea, actually.
All right. Well, Twitch chat's already talking about it. So try to ride this momentum, buddy. Do what you can. Again, best of luck to you. But no, man, it'll happen with time. I mean, I don't know if it helps at all to hear other people talk about their failed shit, but I have done a lot of shows in the past that were very low viewed and real shit, but it was important for me to test the market and really learn about what people like, what they don't like, and what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I think you're good at what you do, and if you keep doing your show, people are going to be into it. You just got to find that niche and find the people that want to buy it at the right time, and you can.
Well, and we're gonna add some new stuff, and you and I have talked about this, and I'm hoping you'll join me in some of these. We got a new place. We're moving to a new state that's cheaper and more reasonable. I have a basement that I can convert into actually doing podcasts.
That's sick, dude.
And I want to launch. I'm gonna launch a Heroes of the Storm podcast. We're talking about doing a Hearthstone podcast. I want to do a once a month cooking podcast where I teach gamers or people sort of our generation of recent graduates how to cook. What do we call it? The third date chicken, if we will.
Yeah, it's like affordable, delicious, reasonably healthy food. That's like, hey, you can whip this up easily. It's not that awful for you, and it tastes like delicious sweet butter.
And that can impress someone, right? Because it's tough. If you can bring someone home on the third date and cook them a good dinner.
Oh, these dishes, the sweet buttery. Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about.
And they're not tough. Like I actually cook because I like doing it 4 to 5 nights a week.
There you go.
And I cook stuff that's generally easy that you don't have to use the oven a ton for if you do it simple. And I think that I don't know if anybody will watch it. If they do, that's great. If they don't, it'll be fun for me. But either way, it's my goal is nobody watches it except somebody will go, oh shit, I have a date tomorrow night. What was that guy? Oh, Toffees. He made a video about cooking something. I'll go check it out.
There you go. Well, look at that.
But that's the least.
There you go. Looks like Stokins just gave you $20. So look at these Zyori subs doing God's work. There we go. Spam that kale, Stokins, loud and proud.
Thanks, guys.
Generous folks out tonight. Very good. Well, thank you for making some time, Toffees. I'm glad we could finally sit down and chit-chat a little bit. I've been thinking of getting you on a podcast for a while, and I don't know why I didn't. I was like the last 2 weeks I've been thinking, man, I really want to do a podcast with a guest. And I don't know why you didn't instantly come to mind as a good podcast co-host. I feel like we could go on for another hour, but...
For sure. My kid goes to bed at 9 p.m. and he wakes up at about 4. So as long as we're done with enough time for me to try and sleep for an hour or two, anytime you need me, just let me know.
There you go, dude. All right. Well, any closing shout-outs or anything else you got here, or are we done?
I do want to give a shout-out. I want to give a shout-out to Razer. My sponsor gives me all the equipment that I need in the studio, so it's very helpful to have them. I appreciate it. And obviously, if you want to check it out, you can go to twitter.com/toffees_Dota2. Follow me to find out what new podcasts are on the horizon. And if you have ideas for podcasts, I'm literally going to dedicate one day of my week to writing and producing podcasts starting in 2 months. So if you have ideas, let me know, and I would love to see if I can flesh them out.
Damn, that seems pretty legit. Cool. All right, get at it, guys. He does good content. Check it out. It's good shit. Per usual, thanks for joining us here. There should be more Zyori podcasts to come. I'm not sure exactly when we're leaving for TI, but I'm going to try to be a little more on point here and pump out these weekly podcasts instead of doing the once every 2 week lazy bullshit. I've been going for quality over quantity, but I got to stop being a lazy asshole. I'm also going to try to keep up with this working out routine. I think that may be part of the the podcast. I'm going to go back to the partial health podcast where I complain about having sore muscles and talk about healthy things that I'm eating. So I don't know, maybe I'll badge you with some of that good stuff as well, Toffees. As always, guys, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other. We'll see you on the next podcast.